President Bola Tinubu wrote to the National Assembly to increase the 2025 budget. And now we have Dr. Joseph Fefa, an economist, Department of Economics, Benue State University, Makode, joining us to analyze what took place at the National Assembly yesterday. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
All right, so President Bola Tinubu presented 2025 budget proposal of 49.7 trillion naira to 54.2 trillion naira to members of the National Assembly. What's your take on this with an increase of 4.5 trillion naira?
Thank you very much. You see, as you have rightly observed yesterday, the President wrote a letter to the National Assembly increasing the budget from 49.7 trillion to 54.2 trillion, citing a proposed revenue increase from FIRS of 1.4 trillion, customs 1.2 trillion, and then 1.8 trillion from government-owned agencies. Now, if you look at the previous presentation, you will understand that debt service alone took 16 trillion, and then recurrent expenditure 14.12, capital expenditure just 14 trillion. Now, the deficit for that budget is as proposed is 13.3 trillion. Now, the budget assumes, among other things, that inflation rate will be put at 15%. If this is anything to go by, even though it looks very unrealistic, then if you are fighting inflation, then simple economics says that increasing budgetary expenditure or expenditure pattern generally will rise the cost of goods and services by so much money being in circulation within the economy. Now, if you see that you have had an increment of 4.53 trillion as it is from that proposal, I think the right thing for the president to do is to rechannel that money to either curtail the deficit that has already been proposed, to do something different from what now has been done, because this will now be an affront to the projected inflationary rate, and which is already causing high cost of living within the economy. If this is something to now do by the president, if that assembly ends up passing up this bill, of course, the argument is that they want to diversify the economy from oil to solid minerals, which is taking the chunk of this money of 1 trillion. It has been said that to improve food security, 1.5 trillion is going to go to Bank of Agriculture for recapitalization, and then Bank of Industry 500 billion. But I think budgets are made based on the fact that performance of previous budget will guide how other budgets are formed from MTF and so on. I don't know how much of the performance that the previous budget has done that you're having almost 100% increment over it as at 28.7 trillion that was budgeted for 2024. Now, being that as it may, you still know that struggling with presenting budget proposals in February, when the budget year had already begun on the 1st of January, is something that seems to be absurd to some extent. But that is what the president thinks. But what we think is that this is going to be an affront on fiscal processes of Nigeria, and it will not augur well with the economy in terms of trying to push this money into the economy in terms of solid minerals. The budget of 49.7 trillion can take care of this. Instead of managing the deficit that we have, I think it's better that we channel this money to supplement for the deficit that we already have in power of 13.3 trillion, and then put our efforts towards managing effectively the resources that we have at our disposal. Once you have commitment to that process and stop corruption, and then judiciously put this money into the rich sector, and then production starts carefully within this country, we are going to have good for it than just pushing money to the economy because money comes into the coffers of government.
All right, so as an economist, are you concerned that the budget is not yet operational as at 7th of February 2025? Will it have any effect on economic growth and development? You would be worried about that.
It's very worrisome. Every other person, not just economists, every other person should be worried at this development. Nigeria is supposed to be the giant of Africa. Nigeria is supposed to be the largest economy in Africa, even though we have been pushed to a fifth position. But to regain the position, we must get things right. Budget is a process of for 1 year. The cycle is 1 year. And Nigeria should know that a budget year is supposed to begin on the 1st of January. You don't have to wait until the end of the year to start making budget processes, because they will be hurriedly passed. Assembly will not make the right inputs. People will not be called upon for public hearing. They will not make the right inputs. So it will end up being a wasteful exercise. And then government will just go away with it, and our democracy is becoming more expensive every other day. Increasing cost of governance every other day is causing a lot of problems for the economy. It is a concern for everybody. This will not happen in any sense society anywhere where you are having a budget. So now, yesterday, they will say federal government, federal executive council has approved this number of roles for this social amount of money. So what budget is being what expenditure is being carried out? Which kind of budget? Is it the 2024? Then if the budget year for 2024 had not been completed, then government should be questioned as to why that is so. But to allow a budget proposal and an increment again to come in February of the fiscal year is something that is very absurd and should be certainly discouraged. It's not good for this country. We cannot grow with this kind of tenet. We cannot grow with this kind of attitude towards handling economy and handling governance generally.
All right, we thank you so much for being part of our news at this time. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, and that's Dr. Joseph Fefa, an economist who joined us live from Benue State.